It's Wednesday, 11 September. Now, that, of course, is a day of remembrance in the U.S. It's been 23 years on from the 9/11 attacks. For some, I suppose it's ancient history. And for some, well, it still feels like yesterday. Welcome to the PDB Afternoon Bulletin. I'm Mike Baker, your eyes and ears on the world stage. Let's get briefed. First, it appears that the White House is preparing to waive restrictions on the use of Western-supplied weapons for long-range strikes inside Russia. And that's a controversial issue that's been in the spotlight due to Russia's escalating airstrikes on Ukrainian infrastructure. Also, it appears that Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán is taking a page out of the playbook of U.S. Governors Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott, recently outlining plans to bus migrants seeking asylum over to Brussels in order to increase pressure on lawmakers in the European Union. But first, our afternoon spotlight. The Biden administration appears to be preparing to loosen restrictions on Ukraine's use of Western-supplied long-range weapons inside Russian territory. That's after reports emerged that Iran is now arming the Putin regime with a fresh stock of ballistic missiles. Well, I don't see how this tit-for-tat goes sideways. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and U.K. Foreign Secretary David Lammy are traveling to Kyiv on Wednesday to meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky, where Blinken said the issue of long-range strikes in Russia would be top on the agenda. Such a shift in policy could open up hundreds of Russian military targets to Ukrainian strikes and would give Ukraine some much-needed latitude on how they wage their defensive war against Russia, particularly as Moscow escalates their bombardment of Ukrainian villages and cities. Blinken stressed Tuesday that while no final decision has been made, he and Lammy would use their time in Kyiv to, quote, make sure that we have our own best assessment of what's needed. According to a report from the UK Telegraph, they'll then deliver Zelensky's requests to their respective bosses, President Biden and Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who will likely then make a final determination at a White House summit scheduled for Friday. Officials in Kyiv are hopeful, particularly after President Biden signaled on Tuesday that the details of a policy shift are being actively, quote, worked out. As we've discussed previously on the PDB, Western allies, led by the U.S., have blocked the use of Western-supplied weapons for long-range strikes inside Russia since the start of the war, fearing escalation that could pull NATO into the conflict. Zelensky has long been lobbying for the restrictions to be waived, arguing that Putin's threats are largely empty and such constraints are preventing Ukraine from pursuing the strategy needed to win the war. But the reports that Iran is now resupplying Moscow with a large stock of short-range ballistic missiles reportedly changed the calculus, prompting fresh discussions between the U.S. and the U.K. Specifically, they are reportedly considering allowing Ukraine to use British Storm Shadow missiles. Those are long-range air-launched cruise missiles that have a range of approximately 155 miles. While the UK has long sought to allow Kyiv to use these missiles in Russia, they are used in tandem with some U.S. systems, meaning that Ukraine still needs the sign-off from the White House. Some Pentagon officials, however, argued that the Storm Shadow missiles don't have sufficient range to hit Russian glide bombers, and that's a critical target that Zelensky is eager to strike. Some officials say the Biden administration needs to go further and approve the use of ATACMS, and those, of course, are supersonic ground-launched tactical ballistic missiles, which have a range of roughly 190 miles. Still, as you might imagine, concerns remain around potential escalation. The Kremlin issued a threat on Wednesday saying that they would forcefully respond if such weapons are used, warning that it would be seen as a move towards direct involvement in the war by the U.S. and Europe. A senior Russian lawmaker and close Putin ally further warned that Russia will unleash, quote, more powerful and destructive weapons on Ukraine if the restrictions are waived. The summit on Friday at the White House between U.S. and U.K. leaders will likely provide the insight into the likelihood and timing of any significant changes in the existing restrictions. Senior officials in the British government told the Telegraph that approval was likely, but not guaranteed. Coming up after the break, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán recently outlined plans to bus migrants seeking asylum to Brussels in order to increase pressure on lawmakers in the European Union. I'll be right back. Every day we hear more about surveillance and how our right to privacy is being infringed upon, and it's true. It feels like we're living in a world where nothing is truly private anymore. Most of us, look, for the sake of convenience, we hand over our personal information without a second thought, signing up for services, shopping online, using social media. But this convenience comes at a cost. It's time for us to take a stand and fight back for our right to privacy. Now, one tool that's been essential for me in this fight is the all-in-one privacy app, MySudo. That's MySudo. It's an app that lets you create multiple digital identities with separate phone numbers and emails so you can keep your personal information private. And in this age of constant surveillance, having MySudo is crucial. For my listeners, I've got a special deal. Go to mysudo.com/Mike Baker and use code Mike Baker to get 30 days free on a Sudo Pro yearly subscription. Take back your privacy with MySudo. Trust me, it's worth it. Welcome back to the Afternoon Bulletin. Hungary's government, led by Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, is taking a page from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Texas Governor Greg Abbott's playbook, announcing a plan to provide free one-way travel to Brussels for asylum seekers. The threat aims at pressuring the European Union to ease the hefty fines levied against the country for its restrictive asylum policies. Hungary and the EU have clashed for years now over immigration. The EU established common rules for processing asylum applications across member states to ensure fair and consistent treatment. However, Hungary consistently resisted these rules with policies that the EU claims often defy the bloc's legal standards. One of the key issues is Hungary's requirement that asylum seekers apply for permits in Serbia or Ukraine rather than within its borders. In June, the European Court of Justice, well, that sounds official, ruled this illegal, fining Hungary over $220 million plus $1.1 million daily until Budapest complies with EU asylum rules. Orbán reacted angrily, calling the ruling, quote, outrageous and unacceptable, and accusing the EU of prioritizing illegal migrants over the safety and rights of European citizens. In a press conference in Budapest on Monday, Hungarian State Secretary Bence Redvary announced, quote, if Brussels wants illegal migrants, well, Brussels can have them, adding that transport would begin after the implementation of the heavy fines. Along with this threat, Orbán's government demanded over $2.2 billion from the EU in compensation for costs allegedly incurred in protecting Hungary's borders since 2015. And that's a figure that the European Commission disputes. Despite the hefty daily fines, Orbán's government refuses to pay. Hungary missed its first deadline to pay the initial $220 million fine earlier this month, potentially setting the stage for a prolonged legal battle with the EU. The European Commission condemned Hungary's threat to bus migrants to Brussels, calling it, quote, unacceptable and a violation of EU law. A Commission spokesperson added that the threat breaches the principles of, quote, sincere and loyal cooperation among member states. Belgian State Secretary for Asylum and Migration, Nicole de Moor, also criticized the plan, labeling it a, quote, provocation and warning that Belgium would not accept migrants transported this way. The Commission is actively engaged in discussions with Hungary and neighboring countries that could be affected by the proposed operation, seeking to de-escalate the situation before any transfers actually occur. The Commission also hinted at invoking powers under the Schengen Borders Code. That's a set of rules governing EU border control to impose temporary restrictions on Budapest. Now, this could include reintroducing border controls within the Schengen area, which consists of 25 European states that have eliminated border checks. Such a move, of course, could obviously significantly disrupt the passport-free travel zone and destabilize the region. As the standoff between Hungary and the EU deepens, well, it remains unclear whether the Hungarian government will follow through on its threats or if a diplomatic solution will emerge. And that, my friends, is the PDB Afternoon Bulletin for Wednesday, 11 September. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me at pdb@thefirsttv.com. And of course, to listen to the show ad-free, become a premium member of the President's Daily Brief by visiting pdbpremium.com. I'm Mike Baker. I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, stay informed, stay safe, stay cool.